All right, everybody. Welcome to this is the next episode of the Vintage Spotlight podcast featuring myself, Jeremy Lee, with Leighton Sheldon of Just Collect. We're joined by Dan McKee. Leighton, it's been a while since we've done an episode. It's great to be back in this Vintage Spotlight studio with you here today. We're bringing on Dan McKee. We're going to talk 1933 Goudeys. Anything you want to say to start things off, Leighton, or just jump into why are we talking about 1933 Goudeys here today on the Vintage Spotlight podcast?
Well, I'm excited to be back and even more grateful. And we're very fortunate that we have a veteran of the hobby, someone who's beloved by everyone, and is very kind to share his time today. So thank you, Dan, for joining us.
Sure. Very welcome.
It's great to have you, Dan. It's my pleasure to meet you as well. We were talking a bit before we hit record. Dan, I don't know if I'm impressed, if I'm envious, if I'm jealous, or if I just feel completely inadequate, but your collection sounds like it is something that dreams are made of. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive into the stories. How long have you been into the hobby? What do you love? And Dan, I want to hear, what do you love about collecting? What do you love about vintage cards?
I've never really liked the game of baseball much, but I love the cards for some reason. I don't know why, but ever since I was young and my dad took me to the first show in 1969, I started collecting the real tiny small cards. I thought they were neat. And the T206s they were. So in 69, I bought my first T206s. Dad used to take a bunch of me and my buddies down to the show after we saved our allowance all year. Shows were only once a year back then. And he'd sit out in the lobby and read his numismatic news, and we'd run in the show and go crazy like a bunch of little kids.
Dan, what was your first favorite set to collect, and what's your favorite set right now?
My absolute favorite set right now, which I have all of out in the hobby except one extra Milan, is the 1910 Washington Times newspaper issued cards. And and my favorite set collecting over the years was my 1949 Leaf, which is 100% 49, not 48 at all, but that could be another show.
Yeah,
that's a whole topic. We've talked about it here on the Vintage Spotlight before too. So we hear you. Does your favorite set ever change over the past 20 years? Have you found your personal passion for a specific set? Has it shifted, or has it always been the 49 Leaf set for you?
And no, at one point it was the 1894 Alpha Photo engraving Baltimore Orioles, which had 7 Hall of Famers on that team, which has been compared to the 1927 Yankees. But sadly, I sold that to a banker in Connecticut years ago to buy my house. And that was a good story at the Philly show, him tracking me down and following me around. So that can also be another podcast.
Right on. Well, that's great. It's great to have you. It's always fun to meet another OG. I say another, but it's nice to meet somebody who's been collecting their whole life. And I like to say sports cards is my lifestyle. Do you share that feeling, Dan, for yourself?
Absolutely, 110%. You either have the bug or you don't, and you and I have the bug, Jeremy.
Yes. We were born with it, no doubt about it, Dan. I like to say that the hobby chose me. I didn't choose the hobby. And I have more. I could talk about that another time. Maybe we'll do that, Leighton, when you come on Sports Cards Live next Saturday. But, well, Dan, great to have you again. Leighton, 1933 Goudey. It's a landmark set. It's a beautiful set. It's known for the colorful designs and images. It's chock filled with Hall of Famers. Why is it that 1933 Goudey is the topic of discussion for us here on this episode of Vintage Spotlight?
Well, it's a great question. And so recently I had interacted with a dealer in the hobby that was acquiring a graded set of 1933 Goudey. And what made this one in particular very special is it not only contained all cards from 1 through 239, but as OG hobbyists here know, that the set's actually completed 240. And number 106 was not originally issued in packs, and the Nap Lajoie was only issued later on. And so this set that I was approached with, I was not able to buy the whole thing, so I simply asked, hey, could you send me like all of the pricing for the key cards, like the Nap, the Ruths, the Gehrigs, etc. And so when I was kind of just doing some quick numbers like on the back of a napkin, it really dawned on me, at least for the makeup of this set, that you could either buy every other card in the set, 4 Ruths, 2 Gehrigs, dozens of Hall of Famers Jimmy Fox, Dizzy Dean, a spy like Mo Berg. I mean, there's just crazy content in the set. Or you could have one card. But keep in mind, this one card we're talking about is super special and tough to find. The Nap Lajoie. And so much so, it wasn't issued in the year of 1933. And I was curious, I wanted to ask Dan, maybe as the next question, do you feel that if it wasn't for collectors writing the Goudey Gum Company, we would never have card number 106, Dan?
That's 100% correct. It was issued in 1934. It's on a sheet with 34 Goudeys. And it was and I think it was more parents than collectors that wrote in because their kids were screaming they couldn't complete their set, from what I understood. My dad took those cards out of packs and back in 1933. And another little tidbit he told me, which I never really understood. He said the Goudey Indian cards were more popular than the baseball, and he would trade his Babe Ruth to get Sitting Bull. So that
oh my God. I feel like that's huge news, Dan. I never heard that before.
Yep. And it took us 45 years to complete our Indian Master set, a lot longer than our baseball set.
Hey, just for those that don't know, Dan, because I'm aware, and maybe Jeremy is or isn't, but explain why the Indian Gum set produced by the Goudey Company is so much more complicated to complete than the 1933 Goudey baseball set.
Yeah, the Indian set they issued in a bunch of different series, and some of the Indians have 5 different backs. And there's a series we call the low skip series, which can only be found in series 48 or the very rare series 288. So that set is murder to put together.
That's so cool. I'm familiar with the Goudey Indian set, but I've never owned a copy. It reminds me of a friend of mine, Greg from Midlife Cards, collects the Pirates. Were the pirate cards Goudeys as well?
Leaf, 48 Leaf.
Okay. And there's also 1933 Sea Raiders. I don't know which pirate issue he's talking about, right? But yeah,
I'm going to put you on the spot. What's your favorite Goudey Indian Gum card?
My favorite one is Pocahontas with the deep pink background.
Ooh.
Mine's Billy the Kid. I love that card.
That's a cool card.
Billy the Kid was in the Topps Look and See set. He was also in the Pirates card, in the Pirates set.
In the 33 Goudey Indian Gum set, yeah.
Oh, wow.
He's got a really cool card.
I find myself very intrigued by the Pocahontas card right now, Dan, because I dabble in a very little bit of non-sport. Like the 66 Batman, the 1940 Superman. I feel like Luke Skywalker should be on my list, but maybe Pocahontas should be on my list. And then you get that type collecting taste as well by just having one of those cards. Dan, are you a type collector at all? Or are you a straight set collector?
I'm mainly a set collector, but naturally you just can't collect every set and have everything. So I do have a type collection of sets that I knew I would never complete.
I got to ask you this because this is something that I talk about. I kind of feel like I coined the term flight collecting, Dan, where it's between type collecting, where you generally have one, maybe 2 copies of 2 different cards from a set. Set collecting, you have them all. Flight collect, it's like a flight of beers you get at the pub. You're sampling all the different beers, Dan. So I like to say I collect flights, which to me is 3, 4, 5, 6, really however many you want from the checklist, so that you don't need to collect all the players that you may not be interested in. Do you flight collect without really knowing it, or to you, what in your mind, Dan, where does type collecting end? At how many cards from a set? 1, 2, or more even?
We've only ever done one when we considered our types, yeah. But that flight collecting sounds more fun.
I love it. It's been keeping me very entertained as I start dabbling in more vintage sets. Definitely. Now, the next thing before we get into more on 33 Goudey, the Lajoie, we were talking about kids, adults would send away for those cards, and that was a technique that the manufacturers used back then to sell more products when these cards were simply premiums that were sold with other confectionery type items, tobacco, even back in the earlier days. And Nap Lajoie was a legitimate Hall of Fame player. Was it fair to say that he was a superstar? Was he a star? Was he a top tier Hall of Famer? Was he up there with the Honus Wagners and the Ty Cobbs and the Babe Ruths, or was he a level below? Leighton, what's your take on that?
I'll go first. It's a great question. At least from what I've read of the time period, Nap was really important to the city of Cleveland. I mean, vital to that team and to what they accomplished there. However, if you ask people in the hobby, I feel like they kind of think of him as like a 1A. In other words, there's the Roos, there's the Garrigs, there's Walter Johnson, there's Mathewson, etc. I definitely feel that Lajoie and like Mel Ott are very comparable, but they're definitely above like that next tier, of guys. And super important, of course, to the game of baseball.
Right. And the reason I asked, Dan, curious on your take too, but the reason I ask is because, and Dan, you may not know this, but I collect hockey pretty broadly. And in the 1923 William Patterson set, the company did the same thing. They held one card back to, of course, incentivize people to buy more products. And that was a player by the name of Bert Corbeau. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the 23 Patterson set, but Bert Corbeau isn't a Hall of Famer, and he wasn't a star, whereas Nap Lajoie was. So, Dan, what are your kind of thoughts on back then the companies using a star player like Nap Lajoie versus a common card, like a common player card like Bert Corbeau in hockey, in order to incentivize more and more sales? Do you think do you like that? Do you like that Lajoie is so hard while being a key player? Or would you rather that card 106 was a less popular, less important player?
I'm going to say it probably didn't matter, just the fact you couldn't find that number. I know the George C. Miller set kept Ivy Andrews out, who was not a Hall of Fame player either, to do the same thing. And he was a tough redemption card to send in to get your redemption. But yeah, I mean, as far as a common, or like a great Hall of Famer like Lajoie, and I agree with Leighton 100% the way he described the tier. But yeah, I wouldn't care which one, if it was a common or a Hall of Famer. But that is a very good question.
Yeah, I was just curious your thoughts on those techniques that were used back in the day. Leighton, let's go. Let's just. I'm going to pass it over to you now to ask Dan some questions about digging deeper into the 33 Goudey set and some mysteries out there.
Sure. So, before we kind of come back to, which would you choose, right? The balance of the set or the Lajoie, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. I am fascinated by the fact that not only did you say that your dad collected the Goudey set out of packs, but you seem to definitively be very clear on the fact that your dad told you that the Goudey Indian Gum cards were actually more popular than the baseball. And I'm curious, like, was your dad alone in that? Did he tell you stories or share stories of like, hey, there was one or two guys who really did love the baseball more, and they were hoarding the Roos and the Garrigs? Because if they did, I want to know who they were and where they live.
That Dad said it was most of the kids. Of course, you're going to have your handful that are probably on the other side. But I remember years ago going up to York, Pennsylvania to an auction and bidding on a bunch of Goudeys that came out of a family. And the Indian cards were beat to death, and the baseball cards were beautiful, which told me that Dad was correct, because the kids were handling the Indians and not the baseball cards.
So interesting to me. Really is. Okay, so as far as Lajoie, do you feel that the Goudey Gum Company selected him to be card number 106, meaning a better player than like a Bert Corbeau or an Ivy Andrews, because they were trying to, if you will, reward those adults and kids who wrote in? Or do you think it was just really haphazard and like they threw a dart against the wall and Lajoie's name came up? Any theory on that?
I don't have a theory on that, but I can tell you they did not plan on making it. The fact that it was made in 34 after a lot of complaints came in, I think they were hoping to just leave that out and you never had a complete set, and they moved on to the next year.
It's a great point, but to credit the Goudey Gum Company, they must have got enough inquiries that they took it so seriously that, and I think a lot of folks don't really get this, Dan, this card was not printed isolated on its own. The card was added, meaning the Lajoie was added to the sheet of the 1934 Goudey set. And therefore, and this is what's mind-boggling to me, I looked at the pop report of the 33 Goudey Lajoie before we got on today's show. Between PSA and SGC, there's only 144 examples graded. But then, if they're putting that card on a sheet and they're making an entire set of 1934 Goudey, there had to be, at the minimum, thousands of Lajoies, if not tens of thousands of Lajoies. Do you think I'm crazy? Do you think it was only on a select number of sheets? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it was only on a certain amount of sheets. And I also know for a fact that some of them were mailed out individually, because I've seen an envelope with they used to close the envelopes with a stapler, and a lot of times the stapler went through the card too. So if you see a Lajoie that has a staple hole through it, that was sent out individually to a family from the Goudey Gum Company.
Pretty amazing. Now, I'm curious because that I had heard before. Have you ever heard, or did your dad ever hear, of a 1933 Goudey Lajoie appearing in a pack of 1934 Goudey cards?
No, not that I ever heard, and he never mentioned that.
Okay.
How about you,
That's a
Leighton?
good question.
Have you ever heard that?
No, but it's a question that I've had ever since I was really young. And per the way we're describing it today, I feel like I sometimes see a Panini card in a Topps pack. So you're telling me that it's not possible that one Nap Lajoie from 33, which is already produced lockstep with the 34 set, couldn't have got into a pack? It's certainly possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And those packs were what? One, you paid a penny, you got a card and a big stick of gum, the same size as the card.
Big slab of gum. Yeah. All right, so now I'm going to put a gun to your head, Dan. We have a whole complete set of Goudey cards. You got the Lajoie, which is worth X, and you have every other card, which is also worth X. I put a gun to your head, and I say you got to decide in 3 seconds or less. Are you choosing the Lajoie, or are you going to choose the rest of the set with the 4 Ruths, the 2 Gehrigs, dozens of Hall of Famers? Which you're going to choose and why?
If I have neither, it's a no-brainer. I'm going to take the set without the Lajoie because that gets me closer to finishing it, and then I'll fight like cats and dogs to pick up a Lajoie later. That was an easy one.
Great answer. How about you, Jeremy?
I have the same answer of Dan, but for different reasons, because I wouldn't be set collecting. I'd actually take everything else. I'd keep the 4 Ruths. I'd keep one of the Gehrigs, maybe 2, a few other cards, and the rest I would let go to fund other projects. But I want to go back to Dan's answer for a sec, Leighton. And by the way, it's a fun question, but for me, it's an easy answer. But back to Dan, you said you take everything else and then fight like heck to find the Lajoie. Would you be confident enough that you could find that Lajoie, or would it not be easier to take the Lajoie and complete the set? Wouldn't it be easier to complete the rest of the set, Dan, just in the way that the market is right now in terms of the float of availability?
The way the market is right now, yeah, probably. You're right. You'd be easier to get the set put together because of the price too.
So are you going to stick with your original answer then?
Yeah, I am, because I'd be hooked straight towards that set, and oh my God, I'm so close.
Yeah. And the cards are so many beauties. And of course, the 4 Ruths and the Gehrig, among others. How about you, Leighton? What would you do?
I thought about it a lot. And because I'm not like a diehard set collector, I would just be loving swimming in hundreds of Goudey cards. And similar to you, Jeremy, I don't even think I would hang on to all of the set. I would hang on to definitely the Ruths, at least a Gehrig, a slew of the Hall of Famers, definitely the Mo Berg. And I would be happy to sell off the rest to fund, once again, the rest of my collection. But I wanted to come back to something that Dan said earlier, and I started to do this. I don't collect that many sets, but for those that I do, I really like to have like an accompanying piece with it. So it's not just a wrapper. I'm really into advertising pieces. And I wanted to ask you, Dan, whether it be your 1933 Goudey set or other sets in your amazing collection, have you ever veered away from wrappers as like that accompanying piece with your set and gone for an either advertising piece or something else interesting as far as that set goes?
Oh, 100%. I have all kinds of advertising with my sets. My one rule is it has to be flat and fit in a binder or it doesn't get picked up, except for my display boxes. I have display boxes too, that for each Topps and Bowman set 5 and 1 cent. But yeah, I've found some really neat display pieces over the years.
It really resonated me, Dan, when you said it has to fit in a binder. I have a few what I call my personal collection policies, and one is that I don't collect oversized cards because I just find them awkward. But I love the undersized cards, just like you. If you're you love the T206 series, you have a 52 top set. Can you? I mean, Leighton, if we can and we can come, I'd like to let the audience hear a little bit more about Dan's collection, and then we can come back to card number 106 again, I believe. But absolutely. Dan, can you let people know about sort of the breadth of your baseball card collection? What year does it start? What year do you go up to? Are you complete sets? Are you type collecting all the way through? How does your collection look?
Well, I start in 1887 naturally because I do collect local Baltimore stuff, and there was about plenty of Orioles in the old Judge set. But yeah, I'm mainly a set collector. Of course, no one has a full set of old Judges, and I collected all through the years. And we did the mainstream stuff first, and then veered off to some of the odder stuff. And I really enjoyed collecting like the George C. Miller set from '33 and the 1933 R337 Eclipse import. There was a time where we didn't even know who issued them until old Bob Bostoff from Empire State Sports in New York found a strip of R337s with an advertising card on the back. And I think that was in the early 90s when we finally figured out that it was Eclipse import. So yeah, we started with the mainstream. Dad and I he would sell the old stuff and enjoyed the history. We'd get a little bit of money to buy the more expensive Topps and Bowman set. Anyways, and then finally I had to backtrack after we finished those and start getting the harder stuff.
And so you've been collecting your whole life, basically. When grading became a thing in the early mid 90s, what was your response as a collector to third-party grading?
1991 was when they first showed up at the National. It was actually a National we were robbed at, so it wasn't a good remembrance. But it was funny. All the dealers were laughing at them, saying, "Oh, that's not going to stick." Well, look at it now. I personally do not like the third-party grading now as a collector because I can't start some sets I don't have because it's just too expensive. But I understand why people want it, make sure they're buying something that's not altered and all of that. But yeah, all of us dealers were laughing at him in 1991 at the National. And you see who's getting the last laugh.
Yeah, absolutely. So with your extensive collection now, do you have graded set? Do you play or compete on the PSA set registry, or do you like your cards raw and in binders? How do you keep your collection?
Yeah, almost all of my cards are raw and in binders. I love handling my cards, which I know isn't smart. And my 52 Mantl's in great shape, and I handle him often, so I'm sure he gets downgraded every time I pick him up. But yeah, I love the fact that I can tuck my Washington Times cards I pull out and handle. It's just a part of the hobby that I enjoy touching my cards. And I do not have anything on the registry, and I do have a couple graded cards because I had a friend that used to be a VIP, and he'd need to submit a certain amount of cards. And when he didn't have his own, he'd come over here and rifle through my stuff and take stuff to meet his quota. Of course, I got stuck paying for it, but that's how my 33 Lajoie got graded.
Leighton, I have a feeling the audience is really going to like Dan McKee for the way that he collects and handles and enjoys his cards. What do you think?
Most certainly. I wanted to ask, I made a note here because I know you, Dan, pretty well, especially after all these years, but I've never asked you this, and you kind of alluded to it with your mantle. Have you ever had an unfortunate accident while enjoying your ungraded cards in your collection?
Oh, yes. I'd be lying if I told you no.
I hope I'm not bringing up some trauma for you or jilted memories, Dan.
No, but I remember pulling out my W514 Babe Ruth, and only half of him came out. So I had to.
And that's like a multi-$1,000 card right now.
Yeah,
or it was. Excuse me,
a couple Cleveland shows ago. I had to trade away an extra Jackie Robinson Leaf rookie I had, so that was painful. But yeah, yep. When you handle them, you're going to have flops.
Dan, you've been putting together vintage sets for so long. You prefer them to be raw from the sounds of it. How do you deal with and manage the risk of acquiring counterfeit cards over the years? What's your strategy? How do you make sure that you're not doing that? And have you ever been duped into adding a counterfeit card that you later found out? And sorry with all these questions, but do you figure you might have a counterfeit card in your collection somewhere that you just don't know which one it is?
Yeah, anybody that tells you they haven't bought a counterfeit card, I'm gonna call a liar, no matter how good they are. I remember every day I pull out a different set to look at. One day I pulled out my D304 General Baking set from 1911, and I went into the throne, and I'm sitting there looking. I flipped the page, and two cards just blasted out at me, and I said, "Oh my God!" And I knew they were fake right there. Didn't look closely at them when I bought them and put them in the set. Man, I couldn't get out of there fast enough. Straight over to eBay, pulled it up. I think somebody up in New England had them both for sale for about 3 times more than they were worth. Bang, bang, had to get them and get those fakes out of my book. So, yes, I have done it. And then I may have a fraudulent one, but I count on my 55 years of collecting experience, and I put that up against, just about anybody as far as being able to tell a repro.
And I've heard a lot of people talking about smelling the cards now as a technique to detect counterfeits. Is that a strategy that you use as well?
Been using it for years. Absolutely. Yep. That is definitely one of the common traits.
Yeah, interesting. Leighton, how about you? Do you smell cards ever when you're out buying raw collections?
I do, but I preface that with, I tell people when I'm at their home or their office or wherever what I'm about to do, because I don't want to be looked at in a very strange way. And I explain to them that I'm just trying to, if you will, authenticate the situation.
Yeah.
And so I agree with Dan.
And what do you do if you smell it and you smell smoke? I think a lot of people smoked in their homes for many, many years, and you can get a good scent. That tobacco scent can stick around for quite a long time, even after people quit the habit. What happens then, Leighton, if you smell smoke on cards? How do you deal with that?
Oh, sorry, I was gonna make a joke. Like, if it smells like a fire, I get the F out of there and I run. but the joking is, thanks for laughing. But the joking aside, for whatever it's worth, even though I don't like the smell of smoke, typically if smoke is kind of like embedded in the cards, it means the cards have been around for a long time. Yeah. And that's a good thing when it comes to, if you will, counterfeits or a card that has been around for decades and decades. And I could see Dan nodding. And so that's why that smell is important. But I have got some looks, and I was going to make another joke. Can you imagine out of this show that there's now a new qualifier from PSA, and it is the SM qualifier, and that's because it smells?
which you'd have to open up that holder to verify.
I know. So, who knows? But at the very least, we're having some fun here today.
The SM qualifier. Yeah. It smells. You'll never smell, but it smells. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right
exactly.
On. All right. Well, I kind of went a bit off program there, but some questions that just sort of came to me that I wanted to tap into, both Dan and Leighton too there. But should we make our way back to the Lajoie, the 106, and some intricacies with that card, Leighton?
Yes. And before we move on, I wanted to ask Dan one more question about that card, because I'm really kind of like infatuated with the fact that whether it be parents or kids were urging their parents, Dan, to write the company. Do you know of anyone, even if it wasn't direct, like you heard someone from your dad's group of friends that after, whether it be a few months or a year of trying to find the set, they knew that 106 was missing? And I'm curious if you knew of anyone personally, your dad knew of anyone that actually reached out to the Goudey Gum Company about their missing number 106.
Yes, but it's not related to us, but a dealer friend of mine, one of his, I think, great uncles, and they had 2 Lajoies, and both of them came in those envelopes I told you about, stapled shut. That's how I knew about that. So their family did reach out years ago and complained, and they had 2 of them mailed.
I wish you could see my goosebumps right now. I mean, that's unbelievable, Dan. I appreciate you sharing that hobby story with us. But let's get down to brass tacks here, because we talked about something at the Philly show recently, and you blew my mind. And it all has to do with card number 106, but not Nap Lajoie. And I had never heard anything like that before. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Dan. And this is for those that are absolute vintage card nerds like us. But have you ever heard of another card from the 1933 Goudey set with the number 106 not being a Nap Lajoie card?
Yeah, yes, I have, and I have actually seen it about 30 years ago. And it was Leo Durocher, number 106, same pose and same bio as his regular card, but number 106. Now, you gave me a little bit of time before this podcast, and I did a little research and actually was able to find out where that card is right now and learned something new myself. There was 6 or 8 proof cards made, all numbered from 100 to 140. And this gentleman has all but one. I think he still needs the Kiki Kyler. But he said all of them are the identical pose and bios as their regular cards, just off numbered a little bit. And the numbers are all between 100 and 140. And there's only one, other 106, and it is Leo Durocher.
Wow, that is incredible. If that's sold today at auction, let's just say conservatively, Dan, there's 100+ people with a graded Goudey set. What would that number 106 Leo Durocher sell for at auction today?
Well, all those people with the graded set, since that Durocher's not on the registry, probably won't care about it. It's got to be listed on that registry or they don't care. Believe me, I run into that all the time.
Touché, my friend.
But if one of them got it on the registry, I would imagine it would go for millions.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's just crazy how it's, it is part of the master set, but PSA themselves likely don't know about it. Otherwise, there would be a separate master set registry that they would have those cards on. Dan, have you or the gentleman who owns those cards, do you know, has anyone reached out to PSA and said, hey, your master 33 Goudey set checklist is incomplete?
No, I haven't. And the guy that has them is a raw collector like myself too. He's an old timer. He actually started before me in the early 60s.
It's so interesting that it's an incomplete set, and because nobody knew, it's not PSA's fault or the set registry person's fault or even the collectors who are competing on that particular registry. They don't even know, maybe until, like, Dan, how many people know about this card? Is this something you kind of keep under wraps on the East Coast, on the card show scene? Like, how many people even know about this besides the three of us?
I mean, probably still in the hobby, probably maybe a dozen people that were around heavy in the hobby back in the late 80s. And I wouldn't say a lot.
So we're kind of breaking the news here right now.
Yes.
Holy.
That's exciting. Really,
I don't know if we understand the magnitude of this, Leighton. I mean, can you put it in perspective?
Yeah, this is unbelievable. So first off, the fact that Dan's father was collecting Goudeys from the packs is just absurd to me. Okay. Amazing. I already loved Dan before this. Now I'm definitely inviting myself over for Thanksgiving this year. There's no doubt. Second of all, and I think, listen, I like to focus on the economics. It's just kind of fun to play that game. I legitimately think, and I could be crazy, I think that Leo Durocher card, if it's truly a 1 of 1 and there's no others, I think it could sell for over $2 million at auction.
If it's the only one, if it's the only copy, there's no max. I mean, if it's a legit thing, there's no maximum. It could be, who knows what that would sell for. Yeah, but I hear what Dan says too. It's not on the registry, so that's going to keep some people from needing it, because people, they go by the registry checklist versus the reality of the situation more or less in time in many cases. So interesting. So cool, Leighton. So cool.
I know, and it's really cool. And I think this is kind of like the spirit of Vintage Spotlight, Jeremy. This is why you and I were so excited by the episode. Listen, we love talking to collectors, certainly OGs like Dan that are a lot of fun and easy to talk to. But let's be clear, we want to try to educate the space. And it is not often that you could share a piece of information. To quote Dan, there might only be about a dozen or so people that know in the entire hobby. And to me, that is the spirit of the Vintage Spotlight.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well done. I'm glad that you were able to bring Dan to the show today, Leighton. So thank you for that. Guys, is there anything else that either of you wanted to talk about before we wrap up? I don't want to cut this off early, but if there's anything else that Leighton you had in mind, or Dan that you had in mind, I want to open it up to that. If not, we can wrap this up on a high note with bringing new information to the hobby. Leighton?
No, I mean, I kind of said my piece, and at the end of the day, candidly, I could talk with Dan and you for hours, but I'm going to spare the audience from that. And I'm really looking forward to seeing both you, Jeremy, and Dan real soon, so we can, talk card turkey. And,
I can't wait. I can't wait to come to the Philly show again. I probably saw your table, Dan, walk by you. I was there September of last year, and I was at Leighton's table a bit. So I'm sorry that we didn't get to realize that we were going to do this a year later. But yeah, it's been great to have you. Anything else, any other tidbits or anything, Dan, that's on your mind that you'd like to share?
If you guys don't mind, I'd like to take a minute to apologize to my father. I picked on him pretty bad way up until I lost him over selling our 2 Baltimore Babe Ruth news schedule cards. One in 1991 for $1,000 and the other one in 94 for $8,000. And I have 53 cards from those 3 sets, and I'll never replace the Ruth naturally because one just sold for $3.5 million. But I would like to take a moment to apologize to him because I always used to say, Dad, how do you sleep at night knowing you beat that guy out of $1,000 for that card? Sorry, Dad. Thanks for letting me do that, guys.
You bet.
You know, Jeremy, we should all be lucky enough to have a friend in the hobby like Dan. And I know that I feel very fortunate. And if you do come to the Philly show in December, not just you, Jeremy, but anyone out there, please come by our booth. You know, Dan, maybe we'll do something fun for Sunday. We'll take that thing that separates our booths. We'll have some sort of like big party. Shout out to your buddy Ed, our mutual friend. He's a good guy. He's there as well. We really just have a good time. Like, we end up just BSing for hours over the course of the weekend. Like, there's no better time for me on an annual basis.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Dan McKee, for joining us. Hope to one day get to see your collection. It sounds absolutely unbelievable. Every set from 1888, just about every set, all the way up. What's the most recent year that you collect?
I died at 1987.
87, and that's it. You no thoughts on going past that now?
Nope, nothing.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that you've got a hard boundary. You know what you collect. Dan, thanks again for joining us here on the Vintage Spotlight. Leighton, it's been great to get back into this studio. We'll be doing it again soon, everybody. Thank you for joining us out there here, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on podcasts. This is available on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast. Dan, thank you. Leighton, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.